February 22, 2002, 1:55 a.m. Philippine Sea off the coast of Basilan Island. Staff Sergeant Ron Mason sits by the left bow window of the MH-47E Chinook, watching through his night vision goggles. He's an avionics mechanic with the 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment, the Night Stalkers. His helicopter, callsign Wild 41, has just finished aerial refueling and is heading back to base after a long night of insertions. He notices Wild 42, the trail aircraft, approach close. Then it starts what looks like a crossover maneuver, climbing up and over like during an aerial refuel. Wild 42 flies out of his line of sight. When it reappears 50 meters away, it banks sharply left with the nose down. Mason doesn't have his headset hooked up. He watches, confused, as the door gunners start waking up the two Air Force pararescue jumpers and telling them to get suited up. Then Wild 41 slows, turns around, and flies into a cloud of smoke. Below them, several hundred small fires burn on the water. Wild 42 is gone. 10 men aboard. The Night Stalkers just lost their company commander, their executive officer, and 6 other members of E Company on what was supposed to be a routine resupply mission. But to understand how it happened, we have to go back 3 weeks to when E Company deployed from Korea for their first real-world mission outside the peninsula. January 22, 2002. 3 MH-47E Chinooks from E Company, 161st Special Operations Aviation Regiment, self-deployed from Taegu, Korea to the Philippines. It's an 11-hour flight with aerial refuel support from Air Force tankers. E Company's first transoceanic self-deployment. One of the MH-47s hits the refuel basket too hard and locks the probe plunger. They divert to Kadena Air Base in Japan for fuel, but manage to stay on schedule. The second refuel, about 200 miles from Manila, goes smoothly. The mission: support Army Special Forces operations in the southern Philippines against Islamic insurgencies. Specifically, support 1st Special Forces Group teams on Basilan Island as part of Exercise Balikatan, shoulder to shoulder in Tagalog. After initial training missions, the MH-47Es relocate to Mactan Air Base on the island of Cebu. From there, they stage out of Edwin Andrews Air Base at Zamboanga on Mindanao. The round-trip flight from Mactan to Zamboanga is 350 miles, takes over 6 hours, and requires aerial refueling. The crews gradually shift from daylight operations to sunset departures, preparing for the night flights necessary to support the Special Forces teams. They practice sling-loading supplies, not a routine mission for Night Stalkers, and made more difficult by using night vision goggles. On one previous sling-load mission, a crewman positioned on top of the load to hook the sling ring was blown off by the heavy rotor downwash. Dislocated his shoulder. Everyone is aware the operations are dangerous. By mid-February, the Special Forces teams are ready to deploy to Basilan. The 161st will insert them at night. Evening, February 21, 2002. E Company's mission tonight: insert the last group of Special Forces ODAs onto Basilan and deliver supplies to teams already in place. 2 MH-47s, Wild 41 and Wild 42, will fly the mission. At the last minute, a VIP contingent gets added to accompany the insertion, changing the load configurations. Brigadier General Donald Worster, commander of Special Operations Command Pacific, boards Wild 41 along with the photo news team. The 2 helicopters leave Mactan and fly their programmed route to the objectives at 150 feet above the water. 2 MC-130P Combat Shadow refueling aircraft accompany them, orbiting in separate tracks on the east and west sides of Basilan in case the helicopters need additional fuel. The general and news team get off at Isabela, along with the 165th Maintenance Contact Team. Wild 41 and Wild 42 then fly 3 sorties into the interior, carrying the last ODAS to Isabela and delivering supplies to remote sites using sling loads. The sling load operations, while successful, add considerably to already high stress levels. Flying at night with NVGs, hooking heavy loads in hostile territory, everyone on edge. When the insertions are complete, General Worster, the press team, and the maintenance contact team are picked up and returned to Zamboanga. With the General back aboard Wild 41, Major Curtis Feisner, the E Company commander and Air Mission commander, shifts to Wild 42. After the General departs in Zamboanga, the maintenance contact team with its John Deere Gator gets shifted to Wild 41 for the return flight to Mactan. The 2 MH-47s depart Edwin Andrews Air Base around 1 a.m. Wild 41 leads with Wild 42 in trail. They climb offshore to meet the MC-130P Combat Shadow for aerial refuel. Turbulence makes it difficult. Wild 42 has problems hitting the hose. The refuel takes longer than normal. At 1:55 a.m., with refueling complete, the two combat shadows turn south, climbing to get around approaching inclement weather. The two Chinooks descend into light rain, level off at 150 feet, and head directly for Mactan Air Base. Staff Sergeant Ron Mason sits by the left bow window on Wild 41, watching out through his night vision goggles. Everything seems routine. Mason notices Wild 42 approaching closely. Then it starts what looks like a crossover maneuver, climbing up and over. The aircraft flies out of his line of sight. When Wild 42 reappears 50 meters away, it banks sharply left with the nose down. Sergeant John Peters, the flight engineer on Wild 41's right side minigun, sees it too. He immediately tells the two Air Force pararescue jumpers to get suited up and begins preparing the hoist and jungle penetrator. Chief Warrant Officer 3, Dale Fargo, flight lead in Wild 41's left pilot seat, witnesses the catastrophic crash. He calls in the emergency on the radio and immediately begins combat search and rescue. The two refuel shadows hear the emergency call. They go into orbits over the crash site, one at 1,000 feet, the other at 9,000, to act as communications relay. Mason doesn't have his headset hooked up. He initially wonders why the door gunners are waking the PJs and telling them to suit up. Then Wild 41 slows, turns around, and flies into a cloud of smoke. Below them on the water, several hundred small fires. Chief Fargo hovers about 80 feet above the water, searching for emergency strobe lights. He sweeps the crash site with white light before the first PJ is lowered on the jungle penetrator. The airman stays down less than 15 minutes, getting dunked several times in burning JP-8 fuel before being hauled back aboard. The second PJ, Senior Airman Andrew Brown, quickly replaces him. In the midst of small fires, Brown notices that almost every chem light aboard Wild 42 activated on impact. He spots a life preserver just below the surface and recovers the first body. He ultimately recovers 3 bodies at the crash site. No other bodies from the 10-man crew are found. Fargo and the crew scour the crash site until they're forced to break off to climb and refuel. This time the aerial refuel was really hairy because the weather was pretty bad, Mason recalled. Visibility dropped to 0/0 when we were on the probe. At times you couldn't see the lights on the tanker. After refueling, Wild 41 verifies crash site coordinates via GPS. The 6-knot current has moved the fire and debris away from the impact site. They continue the search, doing a third aerial refuel at 500 feet to maintain observation. Shortly after daybreak, with a Navy P-3 Orion and an Air Force C-130P on station, Wild 41 leaves the crash site and heads for Mactan Air Base. The aircrew has been flying over 13 hours straight. Philippine naval personnel in Zodiac inflatables and surface vessels move into the crash area. Later that day, an inflatable lifeboat from Wild 42 is recovered by a passing tanker. Over the next several days, around-the-clock searches by air and surface vessels fail to locate any of the 7 missing personnel. When the lone MH-47E lands at Mactan Air Base the next morning, the reality hits E Company. They lost 8 of their original members, including the company commander and executive officer, plus 2 Air Force personnel. The Maintenance Operations Center NCO sets up the traditional Night Stalker honors formation, all personnel in 2 rows, standing at attention when the helicopter lands. Everyone is concerned about operations security. CNN announced the crash less than 2 hours after it happened. The source of the news leak that alerted the 160 families in Korea was never established, though it most likely came from local media. News crews are waiting expectantly just outside Mactan Air Base when Wild 41 lands. On February 25, 2002, General Worster officiates at the formal memorial in the 165th hangar at Mactan Air Base. Before that memorial, E Company conducts a private service where friends answer for their comrades during a final roll call before taps is played. On February 26th, while en route to Zamboanga to support the Special Forces teams on Basilan, the 161st Airmen say their last farewells at the Wild 42 crash site. The MH-47E flight lead hovers while individual reefs are dropped on the water. Friends say final words, dropping small gifts favored by each person. A tin of Copenhagen, cigarettes, a small bottle of liquor, soft drink bottle caps, cans of beer, and bread. To conclude the ceremony, a C-130P Shadow drops low, down on the deck, and slides a reef off the tailgate into the water as a final salute. With the Special Forces teams now on the ground, Phase 1 of Exercise Balikatan is officially underway. The Night Stalkers continue to drive on. There are other missions to complete, the HH-60G Pave Hawks from the Air Force's 33rd Rescue Squadron at Kadena Air Base, deployed to the Philippines to back up the remaining Chinook on quick reaction force and casualty evacuation missions. Chinooks work at night, Pave Hawks cover daylight requirements. E Company continues operations. In May 2002, they face another crisis when an MH-47E suffers a serious mechanical failure during a night resupply mission. The aft rotor head glows bright white, then seizes up. The aircraft manages to land before catastrophic failure. Within an hour, a downed aircraft recovery team forms and loads a spare rotor head aboard another Chinook. In the jungle, with Philippine Special Forces pulling security, the team works through the night in high humidity and brutal heat. Less than 24 hours after the rotor seized, they fly the repaired Chinook back to Zamboanga, a major component replacement in field conditions in potentially hostile territory. In its first mission off the Korean Peninsula, E Company 160 SAW acquitted itself with distinction. The tragic loss of Wild 42 cast a pall over the mission, but the remainder of the unit continued to function at a high level. Night Stalkers don't quit. The names of Wild 42's crew are inscribed on the memorial wall at USASOC headquarters, Fort Bragg, North Carolina. A second memorial service was held at Fort Campbell, Kentucky, home of the 160 SAW. 10 men lost on a routine resupply mission. Major Curtis Feisner, the company commander who shifted to Wild 42 after dropping off the general. 7 others from the 161st. 2 Air Force pararescue jumpers. Staff Sergeant Ron Mason watched it happen from 70 feet away. The aircraft banking sharply left, nose down. The fireball, the hundreds of small fires on the water. He and the Wild 41 crew searched for 13 hours straight, refueling 3 times, desperate to find survivors. Senior Airman Andrew Brown recovered 3 bodies from burning JP-8 fuel. 7 were never found. The 161st continued the mission, because that's what they do. Night Stalkers don't quit.